Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Faith Builder. Happy Wednesday morning. We are in our series on spiritual disciplines, and we are focusing this week on Dallas Willard's book, which is The Spirit of the Disciplines. I've mentioned it before. It's a great book. I highly encourage it. And he divides the spiritual disciplines up into two main categories: the disciplines of abstinence, that we abstain from something so that we might grow in godliness, and then the disciplines of engagement, he called it, those things that we engage, like study, proactively doing something that we grow in godliness. And so we've looked this week so far at solitude, silence, and this morning I want to talk about this aspect of fasting. Fasting has been kind of restored and recovered in the last several years in the Christian community. However, let me just say this. It does seem like there's more talk about diet than there is fasting, or a lot more talk now about the physical blessings of fasting than there is about the spiritual blessings of it. Now, obviously, there is definitely, we know medically, there's some wonderful physical blessings, but fasting as a spiritual discipline is what we primarily want to talk about in the church, and that should be our primary motivation for why we fast or why we learn to fast. So let me just say a couple things here that Dallas has to say about fasting that I think are really insightful. He says this: in fasting, we abstain in some significant way from food and possibly from drink as well. This discipline teaches us a lot about ourselves very quickly, which I know well. This is a discipline that I find very hard to do, as what I think a lot of people do. But some people just naturally can fast easier than others, and that's okay. It's not as we're going to see, the length of time. It's the heart behind this, and like any discipline, we have to grow in it. So fasting, it will certainly prove humiliating to us as it reveals to us how much our peace depends upon the pleasures of eating. And I will also say it will quickly show us just our pace of life. We quickly realize in fasting, especially if you fast for a day or more, how much of our life revolves around eating, just thinking, preparation, how much time is put into thinking about food and preparing for a meal. A lot of the pace of our life is just wrapped up in that, as well as peace. But he goes on, he gets a little deeper. He says this: fasting, it may also bring to mind how we are using food pleasure to assuage the discomforts caused in our bodies by faithlessness and unwise living and attitudes, lack of self-worth, meaningless work, purposeless existence, or lack of rest or exercise. In other words, to fast, it brings it alive. It makes us very spiritually sensitive, and it reveals quickly some things in our lives that are just out of whack. Could be physical things as well. He goes on and says, if nothing else, though, it will certainly demonstrate how powerful and clever our body is in getting its own way against our strongest resolves. Now, there are obviously many different avenues of fasting we see in the Bible. We see the Daniel fast that was very popular, where Daniel in chapter 12, he abstains from the food of the king, fancy stuff, wines and breads and things like that, for a certain kind of consecrated time. But that's not technically a fast. That's more of a consecration. A fast is technically only having water. And traditionally, the Jews, a fast would be sun up to sundown. So as soon as, once the sun comes up, they don't eat anything but just drink water until the sun is down, and then break fast with dinner. Or the other way around, break fast. Breakfast is where we get that from, breaking fast the next morning as well. So we have to grow in these. I think there's something powerful about just taking a meal off to just be with the Lord, a whole day off to be with the Lord. And there's time to grow in seasons, longer seasons of stretching out when we're seeking breakthrough, the 3 to 5 to 7 day fasts. And I would encourage, if you haven't done that those need to be done in community with somebody else. We need encouragement that somebody's with us in those areas to grow in those disciplines. And finally, fasting confirms our utter dependence upon God by finding in Him a source of sustenance beyond food. And this is the real heart of the matter. And a passage I always think about is John chapter 4. This is Jesus' engagement with the woman at the well. And the disciples come back and they're asking him to eat something. He's been engaging in spiritual conversation with the woman at the well while the disciples went in to get food into Sychar. And he makes this comment to them. He says to them, I have food to eat that you do not know about. And then he responds to them. He says, my food is to do the will of him who sent me and to accomplish his work. That is at the heart of the matter. Is Jesus says, I have a food that you don't know about, a sustenance, something that is a bread of life, something that is beyond physical bread and food to live on. And it's tied to laying hold of the will of God and the work of God. So I know in my own life, nothing has gotten breakthrough in my life when it comes to getting clarity from God, when it comes to his will for my life on specific issues and his work, the work that he has for me to do, or to take a time of fasting before stepping into a new work and dedicating that to the Lord. So I hope if you haven't fasted, talk to somebody else about it. Jesus tells us not if, he says when you fast, church. It is a discipline that should be a part of every believer's life in some way or another. Again, to grow us in godliness. God bless. Have a wonderful day.